Join me, Arlene Foster, for the briefing on GB News. Every Friday at 3 p.m, I'll give you all the latest political news and analysis, and we'll have robust live debate. To make sure that you're caught up on all of the biggest issues of the day, we'll bring on experts in their field. I'll ask the questions that you'd like to ask. We're not afraid to tackle discussions from all perspectives, including yours. Don't forget, the briefing with me, Arlene Foster, every Friday at 3 p.m. on GB News.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. There's never been a more interesting but also critical time in British politics, and I can't wait to bring you the biggest stories of the day with the best factual accuracy and also a few of my own opinions thrown in. We'll engage in passionate but always polite debate with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Monday to Thursday, 10 till 12 on TV, on radio and online.
Hey, welcome along to a brand new week of the Mark Steyn Show. A new week, but the same old in the headlines. Another 1,000, quote, asylum seekers on the southern shore. But don't you worry. You are very generously going to give even more millions of pounds to the French. And this time they won't just blow through the money and then laugh at you. Also, why are Stop Oil Now demonstrating against the government when the government agrees with them on pretty much everything? And why can't you be rude about Pfizer on British telly? It seems the very least we should be doing, but our old pal Rupert Murdoch won't have any of it. Very mysterious. We're going to cover it all tonight with Lois Perry, Dominique Samuels, Tonya Buxton, and vaccine victim and Brit media victim John Watt will also be here. Plus the most important part of the show, you. What's your take? What's on your mind? You can email me, gbviews@gbnews.uk. You can Twitter me at GB News. Grab yourself a cuppa or a snifter. According to taste, it's all coming your way after Polly Middlehurst with the latest news.
Mark, thank you, and good evening to you. Well, as Mark was saying, the UK is to pay France an extra £8 million this year to help stop illegal migrants crossing the English Channel. The total number who've made the journey so far this year has reached 42,000. And a warning, the following pictures contain flash photography. The UK's agreed to pay France £63 million this year. That's up from £55 million last year. The Home Secretary agreed on a 40% boost in beach patrols, as well as British staff working alongside French border control staff, dog detection teams and night vision cameras, as well as drones. The Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, said solving the crisis is one of his top priorities.
I'm confident that we can get the numbers down, but I also want to be honest with people that it isn't a single thing that will magically solve this. We can't do it overnight, but people should be absolutely reassured that this is a top priority for me. I'm gripping it, and as I've said, in the time that I've been Prime Minister, you're already starting to see some progress with this deal with the French, but that's just a start. There's lots more that we need to do.
Rishi Sunak speaking from the G20 summit, where he'll also be urging world leaders to work together to fix global economic instabilities when he addresses the summit. As he arrived in Indonesia, Rishi Sunak said Thursday's autumn budget will put the UK's public finances on a sustainable trajectory, while the Chancellor warned that taxpayers will need to pay more to balance the books. Ukraine's president has said the recapture of the eastern city of Kherson is the beginning of the end of its war with Russia. Volodymyr Zelensky was speaking to his troops on a visit to the city just days after Russian forces retreated following months of occupation. He's accused Moscow of committing more than 400 war crimes in the wider Kherson region. Now, in Scotland, the Scottish Child Payment has now been extended to all eligible children under the age of 16. It was initially only given to families with under 6-year-olds. Poverty campaigners have described the move as a watershed moment, as around 400,000 children in Scotland will now be eligible. And gun salutes were fired today across London to mark His Majesty King Charles' 74th birthday. As well as celebrations with guns and bands as well, Buckingham Palace also released a new image of the King, leaning up against an oak tree as he replaces his father as the Ranger of Windsor Great Park, a position that dates back more than 400 years. You're up to date on TV, online and DAB+ radio. You're with GB News, the People's Channel, where now it's time for Mark Steyn.
Thank you, Polly, and happy birthday to His Majesty the King. I have to say, for my taste, that photograph looks a little too posed. I'm just saying. Did you miss your hernia operation because some Stop Oil Now trusty fundy had glued himself to the M25 and the useless Brit coppers were just standing behind him doing the Macarena all day long? That's all very well, but the point to remember about the lefties protesting the Conservative government and the government itself is that they're on the same side. Stop Oil Now wants to stop oil now, whereas His Majesty's government wants to stop oil in 2030, which is when new cars that run on petrol and diesel will be banned. 2030 is 8 years' time. 8 years' time. That may seem an eternity if you're planning on spending it glued halfway up the wall to a Van Gogh, but it is in fact a distinction without a difference. The cost of your energy bill is because Boris Johnson and Rishi Rich are card-carrying members of Stop Oil the Day After Tomorrow. Boris's father, Stanley Johnson, gave the game away with Nana just the other day.
Get this, so it actually means that countries need to divvy up this carbon budget between them, and then they need to divvy up the sectors, and then they need to have the measures which deal sector by sector with getting the, and if that means actually some of us are told, well, you can't go on a plane, that's fine. That's part of the national plan.
What exactly is the old liar? He lied to this show just last month. I'll tell you all about it. I'll tell you what, if you see me in a bar after the show, come up to me, buy me a drink, and I'll tell you all about Stanley Johnson's lie of last month. But what exactly is he blathering on about there? The world's nations are going to divvy up the planet's carbon allowance? When exactly? Did they all get together and agree to that? Is Stanley Johnson auditioning for the role of number 2 to Klaus Schwab, the sinister Teutonic megalomaniac, hiding in plain sight as a sinister Teutonic megalomaniac? Look at that! There he is in his Ming the Merciless costume. But I see now Herr Schwab is actually getting more openly Blofeldian. Here he is in some sort of Nehru jacket, squiring Jacinda Ardern to the weekend's globalist knees up. Look at that, very fetching, nice. All he needs now is a cat to stroke. Yes, look, is that Klaus Schwab? Oh, no, I think that actually is Blofeld. But if Blofeld's not using the cat, pass it on to Klaus. He needs to start stroking. At any rate, at one of these globalist beanos, they apparently all agreed to divvy up the carbon allowance. And as a result of that, says Stanley Johnson, quote, some of us will be told you can't go on a plane, unquote. By some of us, he actually means some of you. Because unlike you loser, the Johnson family need to fly. Stanley jetting off to do his deals in Peking, and Boris ramping up the old frequent flyer miles to fleece Yank Rubes in Colorado, willing to pay $100 grand in speaking fees to hear leaden shtick that flopped at spectator lunches and Conrad Black salons 20 years ago. So the Johnsons will still be in the sky, but you won't. They'll be flying high above you while you're stuck on the ground. It's all part of what Mr. Johnson called the, quote, national plan. Have you heard of this national plan? Was it in the Tory manifesto? Lois Perry of car26.org and NetExit is back with us, and she had the misfortune to be on with Stanley Johnson while he was revealing the... Where did they cook up this national plan that means you won't be able to get on a plane?
Well, it was news to me as well, and news to absolutely everyone else. And yeah, for a family that's renowned for their fibs, I think that that might have been a rare example of maybe he's a bit flustered, maybe I'm, you know, blowing my own trumpet too much, but he actually looked like he was telling the truth there, Mark, I think.
Yeah, it's where that thing, it was almost one of those moments where the guy, you spend all night practicing in front of a mirror to not say the thing you're not meant to say, and then you disarmed him and he accidentally said it.
Well, yeah, well, thank you. It's very kind of you to say so. But yeah, I think he might have looked at me and thought that maybe I was not going to, you know, be too challenging. So but that's always part of a secret weapon. You can always pull that one out of the bag. But yeah, so I was quite surprised. The national plan, the world being broken up into different numbers, like, doesn't that make you think of Eurasia 1 and Eurasia 2 in a certain book that I talk about quite a lot on this show? No,
you're absolutely... What I find odd about all this is that when Stanley Johnson says the great powers are all going to get together and parcel out the carbon allowance for the planet, and then as part of some national plan, people are going to be told you won't be allowed to get on a plane.
Yeah, who?
That sort of passes without notice. But then if you were to say, oh, well, Stanley Johnson says that certain people aren't going to be going to be prevented from boarding planes in the future, people just say, oh, well, you're just some conspiracy theorist. You're one of these great reset conspiracy theorists type. He just said it on television.
Yeah, well, you were talking before about hiding in plain sight. I think maybe this interview is going to, you know, get the message out there. But then I keep saying that, don't I? That this will change things. But yeah, I mean, he actually said it, Mark. He actually said... And the other thing he said at the end was, some of us won't be able to get onto a plane, and that's okay. Okay to whom? You know, a lot of people on Twitter are saying it's really not okay. And as you said, I don't think the Johnson family are going to be prevented from flying around the world. Yeah, I mean, I was pretty shocked that he came out with that stuff. He also said in the same interview, what is all this thing about being energy independent? Why is it such a big deal anyway? And that, you know, talked about... He didn't want to talk about China, though. I did ask him, Mark, but he didn't want me to.
Well, here's the interesting thing. I mean, he has these interesting business connections with China. So do other members of his family. Now, why would the Chinese government be interested in doing deals with members of the Johnson family? It's the same reason that Joe Biden's brother and Joe Biden's son are doing all these deals with Chinese companies.
Yeah, it's funny that, isn't it? You know, when there's a close relative that's either prime minister or president, suddenly everybody wants to give you some cash. Yeah, very, very strange. But he also said that we've never been energy or food independent. Well, I think that would be news to a huge amount of people. We were a net exporter of energy until relatively recently.
Well, his point that he's making is, why are you being so parochial and thinking about this little island, a few islands off the coast of Europe having energy independence? We're getting together, whoever he is, and
divvying
it up for the whole planet. Do you think we care whether some rinky-dink little island in the middle of the North Atlantic is what its energy? I mean, who
is he?
Yeah,
I know. Democracy, schmocracy. He doesn't care, does he? He doesn't care at all.
No, so... it's a fantastically odd way for the father of a Conservative Prime Minister to talk.
It is.
You know, I don't know.
And what does he know that we don't know? And that he's able... But what worries me now is that people are coming out and being quite blasé about it. You know, we had Rishi coming in with the globalist coup. He didn't care who knew that he wasn't elected. Obviously, he had no respect for the democratic process of the Tory party. or anything else. And then you've got Boris Johnson's dad saying, yeah, it's all part of the national plan.
Yeah.
Some of you plebs aren't going to be able to fly, and that's okay, apparently.
Are you in on this national plan? Do you have to be a privy
Did you have to vote for
councillor,
it?
or what? Who's made the national plan?
Yeah, we want to see it.
Yeah.
We do.
That's it. Were you in on the national plan? Did you get to sit around the table in the underground secure bunker and come up with the national plan
cat?
with Stanley Johnson? Were you the one stroking the cat while they came up with the national plan? We'd like to come on. Give us a call and give us what else is in there.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Lois. All I know is that I think we need fewer Johnsons in public life, and we're not. And this is one of them who actually should take a nice long retirement with his pals on the Chinese Politburo. Yeah, and the cat. He can spend the rest of his days stroking a Persian. And no, I don't mean all you Ayatollahs who tune into this show. Thank you, Lois. Coming up, we'll get to your comments on this, plus this week's solution to the migrant problem. And this one definitely will be working. Dominique Samuels, Tonya Buxton, and Vax victim turned Rupert Murdoch victim, John Walt. They're all here. Don't touch that dial. We're coming right back.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join me, Arlene Foster, for the briefing on GB News. Every Friday at 3 p.m, I'll give you all the latest political news and analysis, and we'll have robust live debate. To make sure that you're caught up on all of the biggest issues of the day, we'll bring on experts in their field. I'll ask the questions that you'd like to ask. We're not afraid to tackle discussions from all perspectives, including yours. Don't forget, the briefing with me, Arlene Foster, every Friday at 3 p.m. on GB News.
Hello, I'm Alastair Stewart, and I'd invite you to join me at noon on Saturdays and Sundays for Alastair Stewart and Friends. I've been in this business for over 40 years. Now, here at GB News, I've never been happier. I get to choose the big stories that really interest me. We hear what you have to say, and you hear what I have to say. I really hope you can join me, noon on Saturdays and Sundays.
GB News is the People's Channel, so let us channel what the people are saying about Stanley Johnson's plans to forbid you from flying. Felix says, yes, Make air travel purely for the wealthiest and usually bigger carbon emitters in society. Yes, I can just hear Boris and Leonardo DiCaprio and Al Gore all saying, that guy Felix really understands it. Ernest says, this is an attack on the poor. If the private jets were taxed in accordance with passenger fuel ratio, i.e. how much fuel per passenger mile would be the most equitable. No. John Kerry says that he needs to fly privately and you don't. It's like, this is what it is. The idea of mass travel, the idea of everybody just being able to take 2 weeks in Greece or go to Disneyland in Florida or whatever, that's all gone under this scheme, under the Johnson scheme. Greg says, I don't agree with this whatsoever. Everyone should be entitled to see our magnificent world if they can afford to. You only live once. This whole narrative by the 1% is pure selfish. They want the nice places to themselves. It's disgusting. And a Twitter user, why do we never get the names of these Twitter users? Is this, what name does this Twitter user have? Is it obscene? Is it some sexual innuendo? Other than that, we should know the name of the Twitter users. This Twitter user says there were thousands of private jets at COP27. How many normal Mr. and Mrs. Smiths did you see disembarking from a private jet? They don't want you disembarking. They don't want to see Mr. and Mrs. Smith on the private jet. There goes the neighborhood. When they go to Davos, they don't want anybody flying in commercial. They just want the private crowd. Another 1,000 quote-unquote asylum seekers landed on the southern shore because you can never have enough Albanians, can you? If you don't dig the Albanians, well, they're the guys who provide our doctors and nurses and drug dealers and sex traffickers. Here they are in Parliament Square, draping the Albanian flag over the statue of Winston Churchill, as if to tell us that Sir Winston was really an Albanian organised crime boss. I seriously doubt that. If he was, he'd get a much better press. Meanwhile, the Home Secretary went to France, literally swimming against the tide. I'm amazed her dinghy made it to Calais. When she was there, she and her French counterpart announced a new Anglo-French entente cordiale, under which London will give Paris even more millions to hire more policemen to patrol French shores. So you won't be on the hook for quite so much Albanian room service as you're currently paying for all over the British Isles, but you will be paying for a new Gallic gendarmerie, even as your own constabulary are too busy doing the lambada with Just Stop Oil on the M25 all day long. We're always glad to have Dominique Samuels with us. So, if I understand it, the British taxpayer paid off France, then paid Rwanda, then paid Albania, and is now paying France even more. Is this going to work?
Just more millions here, there and everywhere. Despite the fact they're telling us we're going to have to make difficult choices because we're in a cost of living crisis, we're handing over 8 million more to France. We've sent hundreds of millions to France to try and curb this migration crisis, and it clearly hasn't worked, especially with this agreement. There is no assurance that the boats are going to be turned back to Calais. So really, there's no motivation for the French to actually cooperate. And I don't know what planet, you know, Rishi Sunak or even Suella Braverman, the Home Secretary, I don't know what planet they were on signing this, because surely they knew that nobody would actually be happy with this agreement, because there's no actual change. It's just literally more of the same. And I think it's more of the same because none of our politicians at the moment have the balls to say, let's leave the EHCR, let's leave the European Court of Human Rights. That is what is stopping us from being able to take these people, they're here illegally, out of our country. And really what's interesting is sort of the left-wing hysteria about the EHCR. You know, if we leave this, it's the end of the world. Yeah. You know, we're going to go up in flames. Yeah, we're going to be a global pariah. But I seem to remember in 2016, Remainer, Theresa May, She said in 2016, we shouldn't leave the European Union, but we should leave the EHCR because it's stopping us from deporting violent criminals. And she was right, and she's still right. So people acting like this is just some new debate that, you know, the far right are plucking out of nowhere. It's false. We had a Remainer advocating that very thing.
Yeah, no, what's interesting, though, about that is you can't sort of get to that because this crisis is a different crisis according to who you are. If you listen to Keir Starmer or the BBC, they're all, well, what we need, the processing centre is very overcrowded, so what we need is to have more processing centres and more processors so we can fast-track all these Albanians into the country much more swiftly, whereas out there, among the people who voted for this god-awful Conservative Party, they want the guys not to set foot on British soil. And so because we haven't really, the two groups don't even agree on what the problem is.
And that is, I think, the root cause of it. As long as we don't agree on what the issue is, there'll never really be a solution. And look, I can appreciate, you know, reading reports that our Border Patrol staff are very ill-equipped to deal with the sheer volume of people that are coming here. But this whole idea that it's just desperate men and women fleeing war, the facts just don't represent that.
No.
These are young working-age men, and a large proportion of them now are coming from war-free Albania. Clearly, these are illegal migrants. These are economic migrants taking advantage of our country. And as you mentioned about the group of Albanians, I think there's about 1,500 of them that descended upon Westminster during Remembrance Weekend and put the Albanian flag over Churchill. You know, I tweeted and obviously got a lot of flack for it, but I said this is evidence that...
I can't even remember what side Albania was on in the Great War.
Neither can I. And I don't understand why they would have done that. I don't think it makes sense. It obviously was designed to offend. And in my opinion, it just goes to show that mass migration isn't working. It's created a false sense of entitlement to live and work here. What the Albanian community should be doing is saying, hey, wait a minute, you're jumping the queue. We've done things properly. You're coming into this country, exploiting Britain's kindness, committing crimes, and actually giving our community, much of us are not criminals, you're giving us a bad name, stop it. But instead they're demanding apologies from Suella Braverman. I think their priorities are really in a bit of a tizzy.
Well, they know we're a joke, don't they? So
everyone does at the moment.
Yeah, so, but it's not just the Albanians. It's like The Guardian and the BBC and Sky would all, you know, that Dominique Samuel, she seems very nice, but she's totally Albanophobic. I mean, that's...
Oh, I've seen that term online. Albanophobic, where's that come from? Another new one.
I'm so Squaresville, I think that's a cute joke, but they're using it for real, aren't
they're serious, and this is the scary thing. These people live on cloud cuckoo. They'd rather our communities are invaded, people fearing for their lives, migrants breaking into people's homes, groups of men hanging around very small villages. They'd rather sort of this really clear decline in social cohesion and social decay if it meant that they could pat themselves on the back. Meanwhile, they live nowhere near these people. They live in their insular communities in metropolitan London, all amongst each other at dinner parties, going on about how terrible the Tory government is, without actually looking at the reality and the everyday people that have to deal with the consequences of illegal migration and mass migration in general.
Well, that's what was interesting about that Parliament Square demo by those Albanians, is because that's really going to be all over the UK. It's going to be on Remembrance Day, which is like the most solemn occasion in the British calendar. They took it over and made it about something else, and where you can be in the most obscure corner of far rural Scotland, Northern Ireland, beyond the Giant's Causeway or wherever, and eventually what happened in Parliament Square is going to be happening to your community too.
And people forget when they talk about, oh, we need more safe and legal routes, I mean, let's look at, for example, what's going on in Joe Biden's America. Their southern border has been absolutely invaded at the moment. The people that are supposed to be in charge of regulating this whole thing have resigned. Biden doesn't have a clue what's going on. you know, you can call me a conspiracy theorist, but it does seem to be generally that we're almost being conditioned to get used to our borders being invaded left, right and centre.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. It's like the United States has a totally open southern border. The United Kingdom has a totally open southern border. Italy has just, the new government in Italy has just been totally slammed for not letting the guys off the ships and saying, you know, you came with a German charity, why don't you sail off to Germany?
And they can be bullied. That's the problem. They can be bullied by this quote-unquote international community.
Yeah.
And this is why I'm so against this whole idea of globalism that's become so popular in recent years. You know, the supremacy of the United Nations, the supremacy of the World Economic Forum, the World Health Organization, that seek to actually twist the arm of leaders of individual countries so that they don't prioritise their own people and the needs of their own people. They prioritise unelected Bill Gates and Klaus Schwab, who nobody voted for, and I think nobody actually really likes if you know, step outside of Twitter.
No, that's true. It's almost as if the king's prime ministers in London, in Ottawa, in Canberra, all over the map are in fact working for somebody else entirely.
And not the people at all.
It's very weird and not for the people they're meant to be serving. Thank you very much, Dominique. Still to come, Stump the Steyn. You can ask me anything. gbviews@gbnews.uk. Tonya Buxton is here. And the British government recognises that AstraZeneca and Pfizer can kill you and cripple you and has begun compensating those so injured or bereaved by the vaccine. So why won't Rupert Murdoch let you bring him up on a channel that boasts about how uncensored it is? Man up, Rupert. John Watt is coming next. We'll be right back.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you know, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. There's never been a more interesting but also critical time in British politics, and I can't wait to bring you the biggest stories of the day with the best factual accuracy and also a few of my own opinions thrown in. We'll engage in passionate but always polite debate with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Monday to Thursday, 10 till 12 on TV, on radio and online.
Every Friday and Sunday night from 9, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
We're on the same page again. There's something weird happening.
Let Ian finish. Don't be such a cranky.
That mini budget was the tip of the iceberg.
And on Saturday, my show just got bigger. From 8, it's Mark Dolan's Saturday Night In.
You can't govern a country if you can't speak. Stop talking.
My God, we reached the end. I've never been early in my life. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing. You see, amazing.
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
Do you know Albert Bourla, the chief executive of Pfizer? Here he is with the self-styled president of Europe, Cruella von der Leyen, demonstrating how not to social distance. What's the German for incoming tongue sarny? Anyway, when he's not putting the moves on Cruella, Pfizer's head honcho is mostly famous for coming down with the COVID every 2 months. You can set your clocks by that. Headline from CNN. Pfizer CEO Albert Bourla tests positive for COVID-19 again. How about that? He's boosted up the wazoo, but you're not meant to get another booster until 3 months after your last dose of COVID. So Mr. Bourla getting the virus every 2 months is really playing havoc with his booster schedule. Anyway, given that the Pfizer vaccine doesn't appear to work for the bloke who unleashed it on the world, you'd think we'd all be allowed to express some mild skepticism about the thing, but not over at what's that place called? Talk Radio? Talk TV? It's the new station Rupert Murdoch launched after he decided to leave Jerry Hall for Piers Morgan, which no one has ever done before. Anyway, Rupert gave Piers all his money, and the result is this new station, Piers Morgan Uncensored. Piers may not be censored, but everybody else is. John Watt got the Pfizer shot, and it ruined his life. So he called up Petri Hosken on Talk TV, and she said, oh, we can't talk about that because Pfizer has very deep pockets.
I'm sorry, there are laws, John, and there are laws of defamation. There are these companies have got massive pockets and they can sue. And that's why, you know, I'm going to have to, I'm really sorry, but I'm going to have to call an end to the conversation because I've asked you not to mention the company name, and you have done several times. And they are not here to defend themselves, right? And we can't be, you know, giving out information that these things happen without emphatic medical proof that they do. So I'm sorry, I hope you understand that it is not possible for me to continue having a conversation if you keep mentioning the name of the company who's got very deep pockets, and I haven't, and I don't want to get sued. So, John, thank you, and I'm sorry you're unwell. I really am. I'm sorry you're unwell, whatever it caused it.
Fantastic. Well, you'd have very deep pockets, as the lady says, if you'd sold a bazillion shots of the happy juice to hundreds of millions of people around the world who didn't need to take it. Yet Petri Hosken hung up on John Watt. Incidentally, whenever we have vaccine victims on this show, we always invite AstraZeneca or whoever it is to respond, but they never do. So under Ms. Hosken's rules of balance, you can never have any discussion of what ruined John Watt's life. Petri Hosken just gave the game away there. John Watt joins me now. John, how did you feel at being hung up on by Talk TV?
I don't think I could say the words I want to say, Mark, if I'm being completely honest with you, but she just, like you said, mate, she just gave the game away. She just completely and utterly gave the game away, and the whole situation and the whole... I don't understand what's going on in the mainstream media. You know, I'm trying to tell Petra, now Petra's trying to say, oh, how do we know this caused it? Well, Petra, let me show you this right here, right now. This is in 9 pages of adverse reactions from Pfizer that were released back in February. Now, let me go to page 7 here, where it says here, highlighted, as you can all see in the UK right now, it says postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. So there you go, Petra. You didn't let me get to finish what I had to say. Petra, if you hear this, I want you to understand. People like you in the mainstream media are doing more damage than good by not speaking about the truth. And people like myself, you don't have deep pockets. Well, let me tell you, Petra, I've had to have deep pockets. I've spent over £20,000 to try and get to this position that I'm in just now, and my heart rate's going through the roof.
Just on that point, you've had to launch which again, she hasn't had to do, and Pfizer is in no danger of doing. You've had to launch a GoFundMe page to try and raise money to cover that £20,000 of medical bills. I mean, that's a real huge sum. And there are people like you in Scotland, Northern Ireland, Wales, England, and yet you're invisible to the British media.
It's around the world, mate. It's around the world, Mark. This is happening around the world. I speak to millions of people around the world. The mainstream media, you need to understand what you're actually doing right now is you're actually causing more harm than good. There's people out there that we speak to that have taken their own lives. You guys need to start doing the right thing. Yep. Mark Steyn, we appreciate what you've done. People like Bev Turner and Matt Letizia, you guys will go down in history for the right reasons. But people like that, that's disgusting. That is absolutely disgusting. Yes, I've had to do a GoFundMe. I done the GoFundMe back in February, March, because I heard of a treatment called Goldic, and the good people of Glasgow, Scotland, and people that seen my story back then donated about 10,000. I think it's up to £14,000 now. We've also spent about £7,000 of my own money now. This is just criminal what's going on. I'm in a very fortunate position, but there's millions, there's thousands in the UK, millions around the world that aren't in the position that I'm currently in just now to do that, Mark. And it's just disgusting what they're doing just now, you know.
What I find fundamentally dishonest about her position, though, and I take it, you know, Mr. Murdoch is on board with this, is that under the rules she set, we can never talk about what happened to you because Pfizer and AstraZeneca and Moderna and all the other fellas involved in this simply don't reply. When you ask them, well, we've got someone here, her husband died of it and she's got a coroner's inquest verdict saying you caused it. Would you like to respond to that? Oh, no. They don't even reply. And under this woman's rules, it means people like you can never be talked about.
It says on the programme, have your say. The discussion was, now, the thing was, Mark, I watched, there was a rerun of, what's his name? That guy that's on the programme, Piers Morgan. Piers Morgan, he wanted to raise awareness for birds. He brought a woman out dressed like a pigeon, and he wants to raise awareness for birds. You want to raise awareness for birds, pal? And then I was in the middle of writing a tweet, and then this talk show came on, and it said, have your say, talk about benefits. Well, I was going to tell them why I was in the position I was in, and possibly why I have to go on benefits. The reason I have to go on benefits is because of that Pfizer booster vaccine, and that's a fact. These people need to understand, again, I keep saying it, they're doing more harm than good. And there's a little absolute cretin that is in the jungle right now, that little rodent, Matt Hancock, asking people for forgiveness. Yep. Well, Matt Hancock, believe you me when I say it, there's many of us that don't agree with you. And your other mate, Boris Johnson, your ball bag, trust me when I say it, you're not forgotten about and what you've done. Because, like I say, a lot of people, you need to understand, the facts are coming out about this every single day. The more you back this thing, the more you're looking like idiots. You're actually looking like absolute idiots. The more and more, every single week or month, there is more facts about these vaccines coming out, and these are doing more harm than good. There are children that they're trying to give this thing to. Like I say, there's other people as well I want to, you know, there's that little guy you've got in GBNews, Benjamin Butthole and Carol Malone and all that, sitting there many months ago, you know, sitting there many months ago with Bev Turner. Well, Bev Turner, let me tell you, sweetheart, you're absolutely right. You were absolutely right in everything you said.
No, I don't mind you unloading on them, because if you look at these people, Matt Hancock's getting 400 grand as a so-called celebrity, a failed health secretary who gave into hysteria and forced this shot, as the rest of the government did, on people like you. You were a fit, healthy man. You did boxing. We've got some, let's see the footage of John doing his boxing thing. This is how John used to be before the Pfizer got to him. Have we got the boxing footage? Look at him. Look at it. He's a healthy man. He didn't need to stick this thing in his body. Matt Hancock and the Prime Minister and even Her Late Majesty all somehow signed on to be Pfizer's PR guys, and the result has been the ruination of too many lives. Thank you very much, John. We're going to stay on this, and we're going to hold these people who still now refuse to talk about it. We're going to hold them to account. Thank you very much, John. A terrible thing that happens to you. We're going to continue talking about that with Tonya Buxton. She's here. You don't want to miss that. That's coming up. And so is Stump the Steyn. Ask me anything. GBViews at gbnews.uk. All straight ahead on Britain's news channel. Coming up.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
to each and every one of you
for helping our great nation
find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland.
On TV,
on radio,
and online. We're proud to be
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flock at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Steyn. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dubes & Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Dubes & Kerr.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
John's story is terrible, but it's a microcosm of a much bigger picture here, which is the pitiful descent of UK media into being pom-pom girls for state propaganda rather than challengers of it. Tonya Buxton is a long-time popular presenter, beloved for shows like My Greek Kitchen and My Cypriot Kitchen, but she had no wish to become a COVID propagandist. Tonya, this has been an odd time for you. I mean, I'm like hated by 98% of people who ever run into me, but it's different when you're a popular television person and suddenly you take a side and you're getting all this pushback.
I was winded initially by people's behaviour and the way they came at me, because I was literally just speaking the truth. And actually, the first thing I did was question lockdowns. And Denise Walsh is a friend of mine, and she was one of the first people to come and say, hang on a minute, having dealt with her own mental health and addictions, she knew that something like a lockdown is the worst thing you can possibly do for someone like that. And then I got approached by a woman who had been a fan of my show, of My Greek Kitchen, and her son had committed suicide quite early on in the first lockdown.
Oh my God.
So when you hear things like that, it literally winded me. I think about it and it takes my breath away. Someone lost their son because he was isolated in his room and not being able to speak to anybody. And we thought the first lockdown, most people thought it was lovely because it was nice weather and whatever. But this woman lost her son during this time. And she wanted to talk about that fact and tell other parents to be a little bit careful, watch your children, because you don't know what they're doing when they're locked away in your rooms. And I wasn't allowed to be given a voice. I couldn't question it. I couldn't say anything. Suddenly, a lot of my mainstream media work, all the writing dried up, all the television dried up, and I started to get abuse by people saying that I wanted to kill grandmother and your grandmother, and that, you know, I was a COVID denier, and this name calling it was like this massive vacuum of vitriol for asking questions.
Well, the granny killer thing is particularly insulting because basically Matt Hancock and the NHS and the entire public health regime wound up totaling more grannies than any anti-vaxxer ever did. We're now doing it to them all over again, freezing them to death with their energy bills, starving them to death, you know, still no NHS. But somehow it only works one way. So you're the granny killer, no matter what Matt Hancock does.
We did actually. My husband lost his mother during lockdown, and he lost his mother because her lazy, awful GP couldn't be bothered to see her. And phone calls, she kept making these phone call appointments, and she got sicker and sicker, and we ended up taking her twice to A&E. They just sent her home till eventually we went privately and got someone to see her, and by that time she was riddled with cancer. We went through a year of treatment, whatever, but it was too late. It had gone too far. So we did lose our granny, and we lost her because of lockdown.
What did you discern about how this was likely to go? Because they're all saying now, oh, well, with the information we had, no one could have forced. Yes, Rishi Rich is doing it. Yes, mistakes were made. No, there were people such as yourself who saw where this was headed.
And brilliant scientists. You know, we had Sunita Gupta, we had Carl Hennigan, we had Dr. Anthony Hinton. They were all talking about it and saying there's going to be collateral damage from this. This is going to cause more damage and kill more people than it's going to save. So why was the Great Barrington Declaration not listened to? Why were they villainised so much? I mean, these are eminent, brilliant professors. Professor Sunita Gupta is such an amazing woman, and she works on vaccines. That's what her job is. And she got called an anti-vaxxer and got pulled names.
Well, just leaving it with the Great Barrington guys. I mean, they're from whatever it is, Oxford and Harvard and Stanford. So they're like eminent people, but the social media groupthink, the media groupthink, turned them into sort of QAnon conspiracy theorists from the far fringes of the internet, whereas in fact they were totally mainstream until they questioned this insane narrative.
Well, what I'm looking to see now, what I'm seeing now, and I don't like having my little rose-tinted glasses broken because they have been, Mark. I lived in an idyllic world.
No.
You know, I did my job, I did anti-aging and food and travel and beauty, and it was all really lovely. And I thought that the people that governed us wanted the best for us. I thought we had true journalists in this country that actually question things. It's been shattered. It's been shattered and it's heartbreaking. But what I've realised is you have to follow the money. And it is as sinister as that. If you follow the money, you find out why these journalists weren't doing their jobs. You find out why these scientists weren't actually being honest. And it's a horrific thing to realise that everybody's just paid and bought off.
Yeah, like the regulatory agency in the UK is 86% funded by Big Pharma. And it's people say, oh, no, these are the experts. We have to listen to the science, follow the science.
Exactly that. And that's what's so very worrying. And that's why the whole system has to be broken and remantled. We can't have Big Pharma paying for scientific studies or paying for our medical schools or paying for all of these things. They can't, because you are then under their foot to do as they say. And you can't be honest, and you can't be true, and it's corrupt.
Are you astonished? I can sort of understand when this thing blew into northern Italy and started heading west. People were terrified at the implications of what might happen. But are you amazed that here we are almost 3 years later and there are still, and including most of the media, including Philip Schofield and what's that guy on the BBC who's always reporting us to Ofcom, that these guys, they're still wholly invested in March 2020 now and forever?
I think it's because they're not manly enough. They don't have the strength of character or the decency to admit that they've made a mistake. So I've been blocked by Piers Morgan, who I used to work with on Good Morning Britain, who I used to think was a lovely man, and purely because I asked a question. Jeremy Vine very early on blocked me, just purely, I'm never aggressive, I'm never rude, I don't do anything like that. I just ask a few questions, and instead of answering the questions, they block you.
Yeah, that's actually astonishing to me. Do you know, just for viewers, I don't think if you don't understand how weird it is for Tonya, because it's like, I've got to go back decades, you know, a third of a century, half a century, to remember when I was non-controversial. But in your situation, it just like turns on a sixpence and suddenly you're a hate figure.
I'm a hate figure, and other things that I consult with and do things, these people chose to find where else I work and report me to the people I work for being a COVID denier and causing deaths and doing their best to get me sacked from my job, just for asking questions and speaking the truth. And let's be honest, I'm not a scientist. I'm a cook. That's what I really do. Yeah. But I can understand the basics of an airborne virus. I'm intelligent enough to be able to read reports.
Are you a virologist? Oh, not like these virologists in the Great Barrington. I mean, the great virologists approved by the state. It's extraordinary.
It's the social psychologist.
Thank you, Tonya. You've put up with a hell of a lot this last couple of years, and you're still standing. Let's see what we got here before we stump it out. Why not return the Channel migrants to the EU via the Irish border? No documents required. It's just begging. Yeah, I'm actually, that's a great idea. They land on the southern shore. We take them to, I don't know, Enniskillen or Newcastle County Down, and then we slip them south to back to the EU. Yeah, that's my kind of Irish backstop. That's going to do it. Dan Wootton is here to macerate your Monday. That's a little culinary term. To macerate your Monday, as Tonya would appreciate that one.
I think
she's been pretty well and thoroughly macerated. What you got for us, Dan?
Well, we're going to continue the theme that you've just been discussing with Tonya, actually, with Neil Oliver tonight, because this whole question of the COVID amnesty is gathering steam. And there's a lot of people, Mark, who are saying, let's just remind the folk wanting an amnesty of what they did to us over the last couple of years. So I imagine Neil's going to have a very strong take of that. Plus, Paul Burrell, Princess Diana's rock, on why he's furious about the new series of The Crown.
Oh, that's super interesting, Dan. I can't wait. I can't wait for that. Yeah, I think I went off the Crown round about when it got to 1954, something like that. That's all coming up on the best late night telly show with Dan Wootton. Stay safe, stay free.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. There's never been a more interesting but also critical time in British politics, and I can't wait to bring you the biggest stories of the day with the best factual accuracy and also a few of my own opinions thrown in. We'll engage in passionate but always polite debate with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Monday to Thursday, 10 till 12 on TV, on radio and online.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each